The Mandalorian goes against one of the most fearsome creatures in all of science fiction on today's Versus video. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Versus video. Today we will be taking Din Djarin, the Mandalorian from The Mandalorian, and putting him up against the Xenomorph from Alien. Now, a few things to mention before we get started. First of all, before we talk about rules, unfortunately I can't use Alien footage from this video. What I mean is I can't use footage from the movies because they always get copyright claimed, so sorry about that. And second, this is a return to one of the most popular and I think unique series on my channel. I want to make a promise going into 2021 that I will try to cover more of these type of videos. I want to go back to my roots with fleet battles and everything else, so make sure you guys hold me to that, and also leave me some interesting ideas down in the comments. So let's talk about rules. When it comes to the Xenomorph, we're primarily going to be using feats found in the first two Alien movies, but especially Alien, because this is a one-to-one battle, one Xenomorph versus Din Djarin. When it comes to Din Djarin, we will be considering not only his armor and equipment, but also his fighting style, his subjective elements that sometimes we ignore in these battles. However, we've got to try to ignore things like plot armor. Baby Yoda, Grogu, will not be alongside the Mandalorian here, and Mando is equipped with all of the weapons he has at the beginning of the Season 2 finale. So no disintegration rifle, but blaster, Beskar spear, full armor, etc. We will, however, do two rounds, one where the Mandalorian has a jetpack and one where he does not. With that being said, we'll structure this video by first looking at the two combatants, then I will give my opinions and you guys are free to do so down in the chat. So, Din Djarin, the Mandalorian. He's a mercenary, a bounty hunter, a father, and he's lived a life following a militant creed for at least the better part of 3 decades. Din Djarin is an incredibly competent fighter. He succeeds in hand-to-hand combat, gunfighting, and the use of melee weapons. I will say personally, just based on my own observations, he does seem a little less effective than some of the more well-established Mandalorians, in particular Bo-Katan, but I don't think that's super important for the point of this battle. When it comes to equipment, Din Djarin, most notably, is armed with a full suit of Beskar. Beskar is a very rare and valuable Mandalorian metal, and it's nearly impervious, not only to blaster fire, but even high-energy weapons like a lightsaber. It's very, very difficult to get through Beskar, and spoiler alert, although we do begin to see Din Djarin's Beskar staff perhaps take a little bit of strain in the Season 2 finale, we've never really seen anything penetrate Beskar in Star Wars canon. It should be noted, however, that even Din Djarin's full suit does not cover every part of his body. On one hand, that does leave parts of his body open to attacks. However, Din is very mobile in his suit, and most of his major organs are protected anyway. When it comes to weapons, Din Djarin has the aforementioned spear made out of Beskar, but he also has a variety of other weapons within and without his suit. Within, each one of his gauntlets has a variety of weaponry. He's armed with a pair of flamethrowers built into his gauntlets. He has a cord launcher, weapons known as whistling birds, which are essentially explosive projectile multi-lock missiles, as well as other more standard weapons including a knife and a blaster pistol. Din Djarin's Mandalorian helmet also has a variety of specialized equipment. We see on several occasions that he attempts to track his foes, and he's got various other equipment, although personally I would say Din Djarin has never seemed super capable at tracking enemies who fight back, and he's taken by surprise a couple of times in the show. Finally, Din Djarin has of course his jetpack and the Darksaber. Now, on the point of the jetpack, I said we would mention that as a separate fight at the end. The jetpack generally is very, very effective. We see him able to fly extreme distances and heights. The Darksaber is just essentially a black lightsaber. I've not included it for this battle because honestly I think it's more interesting without it mentioned, but I will talk about the Darksaber and how that would impact combat at the very end. Alright, so let's give a brief breakdown of Xenomorphs, and unlike in my Xenomorph versus Star Destroyer video, the Xenomorph in this fight will of course be fully grown for the entire combat round. That is actually a bit of a shame because one of the Xenomorph's most interesting elements is just how disturbing its reproductive cycle is, but I'll save that for another day. Xenomorphs vary somewhat based on their host, so we're going to assume just a standard Alien 1 Xenomorph. Alright, so let's talk about Xenomorph capabilities and intelligence. Xenomorphs aren't intelligent like a human would be, but they've got incredible survival instincts. Xenomorphs can operate very basic technology like opening a door, but it does take some time for them to understand it, but otherwise are great at problem solving and stealth combat. We see Xenomorphs very effectively use vents and move around in unfriendly territory without being noticed. Xenomorphs are incredibly deadly hunters. They are very stealthy. They're able to isolate individuals, attack them when they're vulnerable, and of course understand the physiology of their victim. Aliens also have a very interesting biology. Aliens are protected by a hard exoskeleton and are quite sturdy. Fire will be an interesting discussion for later, especially given the Mandalorian's flamethrowers, but although we do see Xenomorphs show some fear of fire, the Queen especially, in Aliens, I think that's probably more related to the damage that it can do to their young. By the way, a flamethrower didn't help Dallas much in Alien, but anyway, it's hard to quantify exactly how strong their exoskeleton is, but it's a pretty thick armor. Small arms fire is not going to be very effective against a Xenomorph. You're going to need a high-powered weapon, and I honestly don't think the flamethrower will be able to kill the alien either, although it may scare them off, or maybe make them more vulnerable in some way. One of the Xenomorph's most surprising aspects is its blood, which is fully acidic and capable of even chewing through the floor of a starship. And what's more, Xenomorphs are fully aware of the acidic properties of their blood and will use it to their advantage. Now, will blood get through Beskar? That's a really interesting question. I don't know enough about chemistry to make a real decision here, but for now, I'm going to guess probably not. Aside from the blood, Xenomorphs rely largely on cutting, tearing, and piercing to kill their enemies. Arguably, their second most interesting feature, maybe even their most interesting, is the second jaw located within the Xenomorph's mouth. The jaw can extend at rapid speeds and is especially deadly if the Xenomorph has you grappled or in close range, and that's often what we see Xenomorphs do when they get very close to their victim. But Xenomorphs can also kill through the use of the teeth in their main mouth, their very strong and deadly tail, which operates as sort of a blade, and similarly their claws. As mentioned, Xenomorphs are incredibly stealthy, they're fast, they're very difficult to kill, not only by projectile weapons but also pure force, and are good at climbing, tracking, and honestly have a major psychological factor just because they are so, well, alien. Even for the Star Wars universe, they are utterly inhuman, but I think the Mandalorian can probably deal with that based on him jumping down the gullet of a crate dragon. So let's get to the actual combat. I think we've laid out both combatants here. Now, how does this play out? A lot of, at least for the first round, the no jetpack round of the combat will depend on the kind of environment that we're fighting on here. I think if we go fully to the arena of a Xenomorph, i.e. a closed starship with lots of ways to sneak around, even the Mandalorian's advanced sensor systems won't allow him to survive. Now, yes, the Beskar itself does provide a lot of coverage. It protects his major vital organs. I don't think the Xenomorph can get through that. If a Dark Trooper pounding won't destroy the Mandalorian's helmet, I don't think there's anything the Xenomorph will do, but there are still a lot of vulnerable areas that weapons like claws and teeth, and especially the tail, will be able to take apart. What's more, I've got no doubt that the Xenomorph could pry off the Mandalorian's helmet, and at that point, it's game over. But that's assuming things are fully in favor of the Xenomorph, and if he can go full stealth again, he or she, then I do think the Xenomorph takes it. But in a fair fight, maybe a quasi-open environment, things become much more interesting. And the question for me is, can Mando actually kill the Xenomorph? Because I think if the fight is straight on, he will at least be able to keep it back. The flamethrower, I doubt, will kill the Xenomorph, but it should keep it at a distance. They seem to be fairly adverse to fire. That gives him some space and maneuverability. The Mandalorian's blaster is fairly unique to the Star Wars universe, but I'm really not sure if that puts out enough energy to take out a Xenomorph. Certainly not in one shot, but I think with enough time, the Mandalorian probably could get the job done. But his best weapon here may actually be his Beskar spear. If he can get fully armed, then I think the Mandalorian has a pretty good chance here. His suit doesn't protect him fully, but it stops him from being instantly destroyed by the Xenomorph. If he can keep a reasonable distance and really inflict some devastating shots with the spear, as long as he doesn't get it knocked out of his hand, then I think he's got a pretty good chance. Again, when the Xenomorph gets close, I think the flamethrower will be a good way to create some distance. The whistling birds I don't think would be capable of killing the Xenomorph, but will be helpful, maybe in knocking it off balance like we saw with the Dark Trooper. And if he can keep the creature in view, then I think he can also use his blaster. So when it comes to the fairer battle, if the Xenomorph doesn't have a stealth advantage, then I give it to Mandalorian, but in a close fight. I think probably 6.5 to 7 times out of 10. The jetpack will obviously change that in favor of Din Djarin if it's the correct environment. Obviously, if you can just fly away from the Xenomorph and stay away from walls, things become much easier because the Xenomorph is a close ranged killer. Its tail is its best distant weapon, and obviously that's not going to be able to strike the Mandalorian from a truly far distance. I also think that the Darksaber would be a really interesting tool because as a lightsaber, it cauterizes wounds. I do think it could pretty easily cut through the Xenomorph's carapace, and it may even stop it from bleeding, which is a big advantage over most weapons in the Alien universe. If not, I do think Mando's armor should provide some protection, but the Darksaber is really just a next level weapon in this engagement. The spear is great. The spear, I think, should be able to pierce the Xenomorph's armor, but a lightsaber just has such good cutting abilities. It slices through anything pretty much without resistance that it's truly a game changer here. That, however, is just my opinion, and to summarize, I think in the best case scenario, the Xenomorph can take it quite easily. I don't think Din has showed real hunting skills against truly deadly enemies. He's a lot better in open combat or while hunting bounties, so I'd give it the Xenomorph that win, maybe 8.5 to 9 times out of 10. In a truly even fight though, I do think Din Djarin should be able to take it 6.5 to 7 times, and then if we add the Darksaber and the Jetpack, it just goes further in the Mandalorian's favor. Just my opinion though. What do you think? Let me know all of that and more down in the comments. If you have a future idea for a video, I would also love to hear that. But until next time guys, be safe, have a good one, may the Force be with you.